It began with a shout. Not the shout of celebration, not the cheer of comrades, but the sharp, venom-laced bark of contempt that cut across the small-town gas station like a whip. "You don't belong here. Move that rusted heap before you block paying customers." The words struck like thrown stones. Heads turned. Some stared with idle curiosity, others quickly looked away, unwilling to take sides. A man in his 60s, shoulders slightly stooped from invisible burdens, stood by an old pickup truck with peeling paint and a cracked windshield. He said nothing. His silence was steady, immovable, as if he had heard worse before and learned long ago that replying only fed the fire. But silence in moments like this is louder than words. The man's clothes were worn, his boots were caked with dry mud. His hands, scarred, rough, and trembling ever so slightly, clutched the handle of a red gas can, as if it were the last thing tethering him to dignity. His eyes, pale blue like a winter sky, did not meet the man shouting at him. Instead, they lingered on the truck, a machine that had seen better days, just like its owner. The woman behind the counter of the garage next door saw everything. Her name was Clara. She had grease stains on her jeans, oil smudged on her forearms, and a strength in her shoulders that came from years of lifting engines and carrying burdens nobody else would. Clara was no stranger to disrespect. Mechanics who happened to be women were often on the receiving end of doubt. But the sight of this quiet man, humiliated in front of strangers while his old truck coughed its last breath, awakened something fierce and unyielding inside her. The bystanders said nothing. They sipped coffee, fiddled with phones, adjusted baseball caps. Silence, here, was complicity. But Clara was not wired for complicity. She stepped out of her garage, wiped her hands on a rag, and crossed the cracked pavement. The man's name was Samuel Harker. Once upon a time, long before rust claimed his truck and tremors claimed his hands, he had commanded a convoy through deserts half a world away. The air had smelled of gunpowder, sand, and diesel fuel. He remembered the weight of body armor, the metallic tang of blood, and the unbearable silence after explosions when the world seemed to stop breathing. He had lost brothers in arms there, friends whose laughter still echoed in his memory like ghosts refusing to leave. The day he came home, there had been no parade, no cheering crowds, just paperwork, pills for his nightmares, and a quiet drive through his hometown where life had gone on without him. He had once owned a business, a small repair shop on the edge of town, but when his wife passed from cancer, the walls crumbled. He sold the shop, sold most of what he owned, and lived on what little remained. The old truck was all he had left of stability, his last companion on roads that seemed endless. And now, it was failing him. Clara crouched beside the truck, her trained eye scanning the undercarriage. She smelled the faint burn of oil, the sour stench of overheated coolant. She didn't need long to see the truth. The truck wasn't just in bad shape, it was on its last legs. She stood, met Samuel's eyes. "Let me take a look," she said. Samuel shook his head. His pride was worn thin, but not gone. "Don't trouble yourself. Can't pay." But Clara didn't flinch. She knew that tone and edge of shame hidden beneath layers of stoicism. She placed a hand on the hood, steady and firm. "Some debts," she whispered, "aren't measured in money." It was not a negotiation. It was a promise. And so, with Samuel watching silently from a folding chair in the corner of her garage, Clara worked. Her hands moved with a kind of music, the rhythm of wrenches, the hum of diagnostics, the soft exhale of breath as bolts loosened under her determined grip. She worked until the sun dipped low, and the smell of gasoline clung to her hair. By nightfall, the truck coughed back to life. Samuel said little. He stood by the doorway, cap in hand, eyes wet but unbroken. When he tried again to pay, Clara shook her head. "Consider it thanks," she told him, "for roads you've already traveled, so the rest of us didn't have to." Samuel wanted to argue, but her gaze left no room for debate. He nodded once, slow, deliberate, and drove off into the darkness with the truck sputtering but alive. Life resumed its rhythm. Cars came and went from Clara's garage. She replaced tires, tuned engines, patched exhaust leaks. But every now and then, when dusk fell and the world grew quiet, she thought of the old man with the pale blue eyes. She wondered if his truck still carried him down lonely highways. She wondered if he was eating well, if anyone checked in on him. The memory of his silence lingered. Silence that had weight, silence that held stories too heavy for words. 3 weeks passed. And then, one Tuesday morning, a shadow fell across her garage. At first, she thought it was just another delivery truck. But this was no ordinary truck. It was a flatbed army trailer, painted in muted green, its tires massive, its presence impossible to ignore. Soldiers in uniform stepped down, their boots hitting the pavement with disciplined precision. On the trailer sat something covered by a heavy canvas tarp. Clara stepped forward, wiping grease from her hands, brows furrowed in confusion. The soldiers said nothing. They moved with quiet efficiency, untying straps, lowering the cargo with hydraulic care. Only when the tarp was pulled back did Clara gasp. It was not cargo. It was a truck. Not just any truck, a restored military-grade pickup, armored, powerful, its steel polished, its engine freshly rebuilt. On the side panel, painted with reverence, were words in bold letters, for service, for sacrifice, for silence. And on the windshield sat a folded note. Clara picked it up with hands that suddenly trembled. The handwriting was neat but weathered, like the man himself. You fixed more than a truck. You reminded me that there are still people who see beyond the rust, the scars, and the silence. This was never about money. It was about dignity. Soldiers don't forget debts of honor. Neither should towns. Consider this my way of saying, we see you too, S.H. Clara pressed the note to her chest. Her throat tightened. The soldiers saluted her, silent but sharp, before climbing back into their transport. As the engine roared and the flatbed disappeared down the road, Clara stood alone in front of the gleaming gift. Yet, she did not feel alone. Because in that moment, every unseen veteran, every silenced sacrifice, seemed to stand beside her. News traveled quickly in small towns. By evening, neighbors gathered near Clara's garage. Some came out of curiosity, others out of guilt for having stayed silent weeks earlier. They saw the truck, the words painted on its side, and the woman who had asked for no payment but received a debt of honor repaid in full. One man murmured, "I should have spoken up that day." Another bowed his head, ashamed. But Clara said only one thing, her voice carrying steady through the crowd. "Honor isn't what you say when it's easy, it's what you do when it's hard." Her words silenced the murmurs. Some nodded, others wept quietly. From that day forward, veterans passing through town made a point of stopping at Clara's garage. Some came for repairs. Some came only for coffee and conversation. And some came simply to sit in silence, knowing she understood without needing words. The military truck remained parked by the garage, not as a trophy, but as a testament. Its presence spoke louder than billboards or speeches. It told every passerby, respect is not charity, it is duty. Clara never sought recognition, but recognition found her. And in the hush of those who gathered, in the nods exchanged between strangers, in the steady salute of a soldier driving by, she discovered a truth that Samuel Harker had carried all along. Silent dignity has a power that noise can never match. The story of a mechanic and a soldier traveled far beyond the town. Some shared it online, others retold it in church halls, in diners, in classrooms. It became less about a truck and more about a question whispered into every listener's heart. When faced with another's quiet suffering, will you stay silent or will you step forward? Because in the end, silence has two faces, the silence of abandonment and the silence of honor. And only one of them heals. If this story reached you, pause for a moment. Think of the unseen battles fought in silence all around you by veterans, by neighbors, by strangers carrying burdens you may never know. Ask yourself what role you play: the bystander, the voice of contempt, or the quiet ally who steps forward. Let us honor the unseen, the unheard, the unthanked, not with speeches, but with action. Wherever you are watching from, share in the comments. Tell us what this story stirred in you. And if you believe silent heroes deserve to be seen, subscribe for more stories that give voice to the unspoken. Because sometimes, the greatest victories are not shouted. They are lived.